list of those ideas or issues that you would like to talk about, and then we're going to choose 2 or 3 that we're going to go through this morning and discover what we can actually learn from. But before I start, I'm Mike Manson, and this is Jill Hobbs, my facilitator, and Jill's from Spark.
Hi everybody, welcome.
Yeah. So we're going to use microphones. So some of the game rules, we're going to use a microphone. So we want to actually make sure that everyone gets some airtime. So if you see the microphone rushing around, it's only because we want to actually make this the most fruitful 1 hour that we could possibly have. And we want you to share. So let's just make a quick list of what are some of the things that you believe you'd like to discuss. And I know that you had passionate sort of...
No,
No.
Not really. Give us a topic.
I think to get to the end game, we really need to get the foundations right. Yeah, you need to be able to deliver 5G across New Zealand, not just in the cities.
5G across New Zealand.
Good subject.
For me, the key thing is removing the friction points. So you always use technology throughout your day. You know, you call up your voice assistant and then it doesn't recognise what you're trying to say. So removing the friction points that make technology difficult to use.
Yeah, I'm Alistair, and I'm not the youngest person in the room, but I'm really keen to see things speed up.
Hi, I'm Kelly, and I'm interested in hearing about we could, but should we? So just thinking about what technologies work for citizens and making sure that we implement people that will benefit them in the long term. Anybody else?
I think one of the most crucial things would be a regular meeting of people like us, rather than have an event every now and then. It'd be great if we were, I'd like it if we were meeting weekly. Those who wanted to could attend weekly, so we could talk, have a show and tell each time and say what we're doing. Because at the moment, the City Council's done some good stuff, but they've only had an event every few months and then they have a big flare-up like this. But I'd love it if there was motivation to do it, that we had a regular event. I'd go every time.
Hi, I'm Asini, and I'm coming from an educational background, and I'm thinking about the digital citizenship and the ethical use of technology, and where are we heading at the end of the day? Will we be using only the technology, or are we thinking about the humanistic qualities that we could include with technology? So those kind of stuff I'm really keen to hear about today.
Okay, so we're not going to...
Kia ora, sorry for being a bit late with a question. I'm interested in the sort of the foundations that need to be sort of set up to help deliver better public services through digital mechanisms.
Anybody else? Yeah, of course.
The social impact of AI. You talked about removing poverty, but everything you demonstrated removed jobs.
Yeah, I suppose following on from that, I'm interested in the environmental effects of lots of this new technology.
Anybody else before we... Yeah.
Could we replace the library with the digital equivalent of it?
I'm from the Privacy Commissioner's Office, and I suppose we're looking to make sure that privacy is embedded into the new technology so people can interact with it without necessarily identifying themselves.
I'm interested in all this new technology exists, but budgets aren't there to support it, especially in areas like Manawatu. So it'd be good to discuss how we go about that, because we don't have sort of what's out there now, let alone what is to come.
I think I'd be interested in how security would be put in the future, because if every car could be hacked to kill you and every house has been designed and someone could change it so that it wasn't safe to live in because they didn't like New Zealand, it's a concern.
Yeah, there was mention of like why they're not businesses in New Zealand doing this, and a lot of that's down to the human capital that's needed and how we develop that and make sure that people don't get left behind. That sort of comes back to that digital citizenship and ethics thing, I guess.
Anyone else before we go on to the trying to pick three toss? There's a lot to talk about there, Mike.
There's a lot to talk about. So, have we got some themes? We've got security, privacy as a theme. We've got some of the functionality. We've got 5G across New Zealand. We've got technologies that could work for citizens, digital citizenship, and ethics is a big topic globally. Foundations for better public service, environmental effects of new technology. So as a group, let's choose three that we can get through because we've only got 40 minutes now. What would be the three? I put up this one. How can people and machines work together? That's something new. Is that? Let's have a look at that.
Can I just remind you to talk into the microphone too, Mike, please?
I'm in trouble. Yeah, so the first one, how can people and machines, robots work together? Social impacts of AI. So social impacts, ethics around AI, is that something that would be... Yeah.
Maybe what human capital, ongoing conversations, and financial resources are needed to implement this?
Okay.
Yeah, I think the finance came up a couple of times as well, so yep.
All right. So what I think one technique would be to turn to the people next to you, if or in twos or threes, and just have a 2-minute discussion about how can people and machines and robots work together, and then we're going to actually draw on that. So I'll just give you a chance to talk, and then we're going to bring it through. So your 2 minutes starts now. All right. So I think you've got this conversation started. Why don't we hear about some of the thoughts that you've had? So who'd like to begin? Maybe we'll start over here.
Yeah.
We were talking about the ease of adopting technology and the resistance people have. Both he and I are somewhat involved, or I was involved with AI. So it's a matter of overcoming these friction points that our friend over here mentioned. I rang into the Radio New Zealand the other day and congratulating them on announcing for the first time the price of Bitcoin. I'm involved with cryptos too. And I said, they need to get Giles Beckford to go on a 1-week course on blockchain and cryptos, because both him and Catherine Ryan, they were uncomfortable and resistant to the technology in front of everybody. They need to be given the chance to equip them. Somebody else said that it's a question of human resources. I think it was you saying it was human resources. They need to be given a week off to learn cryptocurrencies and blockchain, and then give it in simple terms to the rest of the population. So that was one thing we were saying.
Excellent. More thoughts?
AI is already here, yeah? You don't have to encourage people to use an e-gate. It's much quicker. If you've got a hospital, there's already robots up behind the scene manipulating your data. I put it in last year.
Excellent. So we are in a time where AI is here. It's how we're actually going to deal with it, and what we're going to do with it, and how we're going to work with it. So your point is not everything is a robot. It's actually, yeah, it could be a, yeah.
Some other thoughts? Anyone else?
Yeah, we were talking about the gap between the tech users and non-tech users, because there's a really huge gap between these two. And as a society, if we are going ahead with this technology, shouldn't there be a process to bring everyone together on that? So that's what we were talking about at this stage.
So similar to what was said over here is the ability for people to learn about the technology for maybe non-technical people as well. Yeah. Yep.
Absolutely.
Why do we need to? I don't know how a combustion engine works. I still drive a car.
In terms of working together, I guess it would be around roles that we understand won't exist anymore, and how we can train and work with those people to skill up in other areas, and actually putting some legislation around that in New Zealand.
Absolutely. When I was in Canada, just while we're going to the next person, the panel beaters in Canada who were in the car manufacturing industry all lost their jobs, but they were actually redeployed as robotic panel beaters.
We talked a little bit about thinking about what's automated and thinking about what actually adds benefit. Like, I like chatting to my barista as I get a coffee made. Don't know that I'd get any value out of an automatic kiosk. And then also thinking about who's getting the money if things are automated. So who owns that kind of means of production?
Good point.
There's a video on YouTube from Google. It's called The Automated Assistant. They set up an AI to be somebody's PA, and the people that PA's phoning don't know it's an AI.
Coming from a teaching perspective, is that the technology's fantastic, but the tools out there are just growing exponentially, particularly the use of the cloud. And I know our institution struggling with their networks to be able to keep up with it. So it has to go to a more individual control, which I know like companies like Adobe are pushing. But therefore, nobody's got the expertise anymore. It's just somebody knows more than other people. So we have to get the inquiry-based learning side moving up. But with the artificial assistant and something I'm looking at to try and bring more humanity back into the equation is making it more fun to learn, because a lot of people, particularly with the age group that we've got, it's like we're offering a lot more workshops. You can go to everything, you learn about everything, but it's what's the least amount I can do, and that's the attitude of today. So how we bring back that desire and that motivation and the drive, because rather than just what I feel like doing, etc., and get, I don't know if you're finding that as well, but that's a big issue with us.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether it's students wanting to do the least amount, but it's what they need to know at that point in time. And lifelong learning, the sort of learning people are going to need to undertake through a career, as this technology comes in, they're going to move through so many different careers. Technology is going to change at such a rate of knots that they're going to have to learn like that right the way through their career. I need to know this now. I need to do it in a small, condensed chunk. I need to upskill, just like you said, with the blockchain and crypto technologies. Those people need to know about them now, and they need it in a small chunk, you know. And I think we need to change our attitudes towards education if we're going to service the sort of people we're putting out into the workplace.
Just building on that, I think leads to a fundamental shift in the whole education system in terms of how we train in really large chunks. You know, you go to varsity for years, you do doctorates and PhDs, and you spend, you know, large chunks of your life in learning institutions. And I think that needs to become more integrated into your day-to-day work life, so that you are able to learn and grow and do your work and do this sort of just-in-time learning along the way. But from a teaching perspective, how do you maintain, you know, the ability for teachers to continually stay ahead and be able to be in a position to impart knowledge, you know, when they're having to change just as quickly? I think there's some really big challenges in the education sector around that. So.
And what happens when the students can learn faster than the teachers can teach because of the access?
Just on that point, I think it's about teaching, moving from teaching knowledge to potentially teaching behaviours, skills that you can't do with machines. So things like empathy, team building, collaboration, you know, really strong communication skills. Those are the things that make us human, and I think they're going to become more and more important as we move more into a sort of a future tech space.
I think one aspect that will help us enormously is if we can remove the threat of the technology by at least looking forward to the UBI, the Universal Basic Income. If we declared tomorrow that the UBI was going to give everyone $1,000 a month, they'd be dancing in the street to cooperate with us. But at the moment they see technology as a threat to their jobs and their families. So I'm not quite sure how to tie in UBI with the benefits that arise from technology, but I think we've got to do that, and we've got to do it loudly in front of the public.
That's a very good point.
When talking about the teaching part, teacher's role, and it's deviating from the teacher's role to the facilitator and a subject matter expert at this in the new era, and about the evolution of technology, and it's co-evolving. I think it's mentioned by Professor Nikki Davis. It's like the education and technology now, it's co-evolving. It won't be disappearing, or like the people who can't cope up with will be moving away, and the other people who can change will go forward with the technology. So that's what's happening, and I think it's applicable for all the other sectors too, not only education.
Excellent.
Just on the education note, I'm a digital technology teacher at a high school in Okautere, Taiwananga Tutor, and I see the importance of breaking away from the siloed subjects and doing things that are more holistic. So if you've got any ideas about how we could achieve that, that's one of my main goals next year, is to create that curriculum, and I'm thinking it'll be in the form of a STEAM academy. So if you can help out with that in any ways, if you can provide expertise, I'd love to connect over the duration of the day. So thank you.
Fantastic. So maybe we should now move to the second issue. I think in summary, there's some really good issues that have come up around people and machines. What I often wonder is every time you pull out your phone, you're actually talking to an AI. It's actually you're interfacing with it. But now let's look at the social impact of AI, because there's quite important links between that and ethics. And even in China, they were saying the world needs to have this discussion. So let's have it in Palmerston North.
Who'd like to kick off?
Mine's a little bit of a concern again with what we see with social media being an example. And I think it's in China, there's a lot of treatment facilities that are treating social media addiction. And, you know, engagement with other people has been proven, you know, that is what makes you, one area that makes you happy. So are we just continuing to move away from that? Just a thought.
So you're talking about sort of we're more connected but lonelier than ever?
Yeah.
All right, okay.
In terms of the social impact of AI, I think the idea of identity is going to become a really big topic, and the fact that people will need to will have multiple identities, you know, for different purposes. So, you know, if we're participating in government interactions, we're going to have a verified identity. They know who we are. There's ways to authenticate that. But then there may be other interactions in our world where, you know, we don't want to be as identifiable, and so the idea of having different identities for different purposes, I think, is going to be an interesting one to see evolve.
And how? Sorry, Simon.
It's interesting as you get into AI and social media. There seems to be, and we've seen examples like Cambridge Analytica, for example, with Facebook, that breach created a problem, and it's challenged us in how much we might choose to trust social media. An offshoot of that is a company called Civic, which is a collection of willing, what do you call them, like your dad, reporters. Journalists, there you go, who are sick of the fake news thing, and they're sort of trying to restore genuine journalism back into the world. And so they're looking to use a combination of blockchain and effectively crowdsourcing across professional, verified journalists to be able to restore truth back to journalism. So it's quite interesting to see how some of this technology can challenge those things around ethics and accuracy, and then on the same token, some of these technologies can start to address those things as well.
Anyone else?
In the last few years, I've been very involved with virtual reality, the high fidelity virtual world, Second Life, and others. There is tremendous potential. We talk about loneliness. I've never been lonelier in my life than going into a virtual world which is beautifully set up, but there's nobody there, or the people in there are antisocial. They don't want to talk to you because a lot of them are geeks. But I've hardly been more joyful when I've gone into high fidelity to a meeting with 25 people, with Peter Diamandis from Singularity talking there, me being able to walk up to people just like here, and they're on the other side of the world at no cost. I mean, you can do that this Saturday at 7 a.m. If you want to do that, just let me know. But virtual reality has tremendous potential for connecting people the same way that Facebook does, but in a room like this, and you really get a feel of presence and affection and connecting.
Bruce's previous comment was about the universal basic income. The only way you can generate that revenue is tax. So you have to start taxing robots before they take over. That's for comment, not a statement of fact.
So in terms of even identity, so other parts of the world, facial recognition is so advanced that I walked across 20, 30 cameras and I saw myself automatically being picked up. Not only that, it actually worked out my age, and it worked out a whole lot of, so someone's capturing that data. So what are the issues around sort of, what are we going to do ethically around the world when you're captured, no matter where you go, in airports, you're captured. My phone is capturing me every time I look at it, and it's predicting where I'm going next. It's doing all sorts of things. What do we need to do?
I was reading somewhere a little while ago that there's a maximum number of 650 million variables of the human face, but there's more people with facial recognition working anyway, so therefore you may not be you and get tagged the wrong person, so that's a big problem I see.
I think we could also choose not to have universal facial recognition in public spaces. I find it incredibly problematic. Most of the time I live in San Francisco, and whenever I see the little monitoring robots, I put stickers over their little camera lenses, because I just don't think that we need to be surveilled by AI or robots all the time. And so I'd prefer to have community-centered policing or no policing, and I'd prefer to have, you know, humans interacting with humans rather than my data being collected either by governments or by companies.
So if you're in San Francisco and you see dots on eyes, we know you've been there.
So if you've got location switched on your phone, the robot doesn't matter, they know where you are.
I was thinking, like, how many of you watch Black Mirror, the Netflix series? There you go. So, like, I have been watching it for a little while, and I have seen lots of issues that humans become helpless because of technology. The evolution of technology has taken people helpless. So there should be a proper, like, what I'm thinking is just me thinking, there should be a proper way of handling this technology to limit people's authority, and one person with tech knowledge, they can make anything what they want, but what's the restriction? There's a global request or global solution there should be, but we don't have. So in coming back to education background, I'm thinking in the universities and other colleges, they all try to implement some of these digital citizenship aspect to the people, like telling the people what to do and what not to do, like how much it is effective, who is following that. So that's something that we all need to think about. And as far as I know, in New Zealand there are some institutions working on that, but I think there should be more effort on that.
With regards to AI, I wonder if there's a need for a global standard for ethics in AI. And I know there's people that are talking about that, but so the folks that are creating things using technology, that there's a core set of principles and ethics that underpin all the things that we build, that sort of hope to, I guess, alleviate some of the concerns that we have day to day.
Excellent.
Yeah, just in relation to AI, my understanding is that AI is said to be probably far more powerful than the Manhattan Project. And the Manhattan Project was built by one team of scientists in New Mexico, whereas AI seems to be completely distributed, it's being built everywhere. And so, yeah, it's that's something we're going to have to think about.
How do you think, that question for the whole group is, how do you think New Zealand is at the moment placed for that sort of ethics discussion around AI? And are we dragging the chain on it, or are we leading in it, or I suspect we're not, but yeah, I'm just curious. And who should be driving that conversation? Is it something that should be led out of government, or should it be led out of communities?
I just think, like you mentioned, putting stickers over the camera, I'd be worried about a false sense of security, because that thing probably interfaced with 1,000 cameras that watched you do it, and it just put you up on the list of things to track. And you think, oh, I've saved myself from that camera, when you realise there might literally, in the future anyway, be, like today there's like intelligent Lego bricks, so every single house could be 1,000 cameras following you, and you think you've protected your privacy. Whether it matters or not, you think you're safe when far more stuff is recorded than you ever knew, and you think you've done something meaningful when you haven't. So you have to worry about the ethics, because you might not even know the problem.
So I don't think we're having the conversation. I don't think globally the conversation's been had either. Yeah. Mike's just come back from China.
Yeah,
Every other lampost's got a camera on it. They know it's him because they're never not looking at him.
Another challenge that we've got as New Zealanders is that we're heavy consumers in a very digital world now, and a lot of the digital services that we use are born in a country that's not ours. So Amazon, Google, Apple, they're already building incredibly vast digital profiles of all of us, whether we acknowledge that or not. And I think we've got a voice. We need to have a voice around protecting ourselves. But a lot of it, unfortunately, is going to have to come down to our own individual education of what it is that we're doing, rather than having a lot of say over what some of those large, particularly US-based companies are developing, I think.
I think in some way with big data, at least the horse is definitely out of the gate, or whatever the appropriate metaphor is. But then on the other hand, I think New Zealand's really well placed to be able to have at least some of these symbolic conversations. And so even if we can't reel some of the stuff back in, I think at least to be publicly talking about it and setting some guidelines, at least nationally, about what we'd like to see happen. Because there are some governments that have been able to set certain restrictions or make things happen in terms of Germany's privacy restrictions, and so they have been able to set policy that's made changes to how Facebook and other companies do things, at least in Germany. So I think New Zealand could have an impact, and is maybe small enough that a somewhat national conversation could happen.
Yeah. So in the 50s, the state started collecting marketing data so they could target products to the right people. And there was a big law case because a young girl was targeted with baby products, and she didn't know, and neither did her parents. So her parents wrote to the company complaining, and then had to back down when they found out she was pregnant. Google and Amazon are much cleverer. They send you random adverts so you don't know they're targeting you. That data's already there. It's how we manage it going forward, yeah? Because it's only going to get bigger.
Yeah, there is some interesting technologies being developed. If you're talking about move from Web 2 to Web 3 that could potentially combat some of these issues that Web 2's almost being characterized by big global corporates capturing your data and making money out of it with almost no repercussions, as you've seen with some of the problems Facebook have had recently. But we've got like distributed applications, potentially the ability to lock down data in blockchains so that, these big corporations don't have access to it for using, building new social media platforms. The technology could actually defend you from that sort of abuse, but obviously these corporates have got such a massive handle on it. I don't know where we go from this.
Just building on that, I get a sense that there's also going to be a movement towards solutions that enable people to have personal control of their data, all of the attributes about them, and determine what they share with what service for what purpose, and be able to revoke that as well at points in time. So, there are people talking around solutions like that now, and I think that's a big thing to come.
So right now, if you went to New World or Countdown and you wanted to get the specials and you swiped your club card or your one card, they're tracking your purchasing choices, they're tracking all sorts of things about you and building a profile on you, and you have no choice if without being incentivized. They're incentivizing you to do it, but you don't know that you're actually opting in.
Yeah, but haven't you joined the one card though already? So I guess, if you've signed up to a lot of things, aren't you straight away suggesting that you are providing data? So I guess we're all, unless you live in a world where you're not joining any of those things, in some ways you're submitting to that anyway.
If the value proposition's high enough, people will give you everything. I mean, that what's that Pokemon Go thing? Everybody signed up for that, including my wife. And I said, well, they've got all your information now. She's like, I don't care. I'm getting this cool thing. So it doesn't matter. So if the value is high enough, people will give you the world. it's tricky to work out that. So we're trying to think about how to do that from public services in some way, but that's tricky too.
I think the important thing, I mean, like, you sign up for the one card, you know it's going to be used to get you specials, and that's fine, but you do need a lot more legal protections going forward. For example, you give your one card and then New World goes broke, and the receivers shouldn't be allowed to sell your information to Russia.
Good point.
So when I got a New World, I'd like a supermarket trolley with my name on it, with the stuff I was going to buy in it, because they can do it.
They could do that.
At least to 70%. Because I buy milk, butter, bread, blah, blah, blah. They know my brands. They should put it in a trolley for me.
They can when you order online.
So maybe we should, sorry, you finish that.
Briefly.
And then we'll
I run a group called Singularity Palmerston North. It's connected with Singularity University over by NASA in California. If you want to join it, tell me. Yes. But one of the fundamentals that underlies what we're talking about here and the privacy thing is, it seems that the grand trend is for us to become nodes of a big network. And that involves abandoning some of our individuality and becoming much more nodes on a network. Now, when you see that, you change. You say, oh, well, that's going to happen anyway. You can tell. You find out that they're covering you on here, there, and everywhere. So you say, well, that means that I will behave accordingly. I'll still make mistakes, but I expect them everywhere to be covering me. And as long as I've got accountability to correct it, as you were saying, then that's part of it. But it seems that humanity wants the benefit of massive, intimate networking. And that's what Singularity is all about. Singularity is when we merge with technology and become one grand network.
We're going well for time. There's some really, I really like this global standard for ethics for AI, and I think New Zealand could be a leading force. I think it's something the United Nations could probably do a bit of work on as well, and I think we should really work hard at that. One of the things, just to finish it, one of the things I thought about was that with AI, the medical research has been, the one benefit has been huge with the ability to actually research. In China with cancers and all sorts of things, they're able to actually get faster and more information. But one guy got up and he said, look, I'm a scientist and I've been working on the quantum computer and I think I've cracked it now. So we've got this. He said, we will deliver 1 million times more processing power that the world has today. 1 million times more. And we're going to do that tomorrow. So what does that mean for us? So let's go to our next topic. About human capital that needs to be developed, the resources, the finances, all the aspects around it. Let's see what you want to come up with there.
Who'd like to kick that off?
There's an assumption that we need to. If that computer's really ready, it'll replace us.
Which is fine, and that might well come to pass. But what does that mean for the social and economic sort of state of nations? You know, it could plunge the planet into total turmoil if you allowed it to. So.
The big dilemma, or what we're looking at with AI competing with humans, it's a question of whether we merge with AI, just as we've merged with the cell phones in our pockets and the internet. We've got the choice of putting it inside our heads and with wearables and so on, or there is the reality that it could independently run away on us, especially when it's increasingly given autonomy to find out what we need it to find out, and also we enable AIs to talk to each other so that they hugely accelerate their learning talking to each other. Elon Musk thinks we're doomed. He may be right, but I think the thing, our best way of surviving this is to include AI implanted into us on wearables and laptops, whatever it is, but for it to become a part of us rather than a competitor of us.
There's an excellent report the World Economic Forum put out just 2 or 3 weeks ago, which is about the future of jobs just over the next 2 years out till 2020, and it has surveyed something like 15, 20 million people across the planet, and they've organised the data by country, by industry, that sort of thing. And it's looking as though like 50% of existing jobs are going to be redundant, even in that projected timeline. And there's some scary stats there. You know, they've asked businesses how they're going to are they going to retrain people? Who are they going most likely to retrain in their businesses? And the people that are most in need of retraining are going to be the people least likely to receive it. And those are the people at the bottom of the food chain as far as jobs are concerned. And there's potential here for this technology to exacerbate all the sort of social sort of inequities that we've got at the moment, which are already, you know, becoming huge and have been exacerbated by these big global corporations sucking money out of the pool, you know, and that's a big concern for me. How do we combat that? World Economic Forum, the future of jobs, 2018 to 2020, something like that. But worth a look.
Anybody else have some comments?
The developing nations often leapfrog technologies, as you're probably aware. They get cell phones, they don't have to run cable, they don't have to run copper. So similarly, the divide between the super rich and the super poor, the super educated and the less, can be presumably leapfrogged as well. If we're going to adopt technology and augment ourselves with technology like our cell phones, implants, wearables, that sort of thing, then presumably they can be ahead of us if they're willing to adopt it. Malta has declared itself a country that wants to be the world leader in blockchain and cryptocurrencies. It's only a little small fry, but it's imaginative and it can do that very quickly.
I think there's examples like Ethiopia and others who are just taking the world by storm in terms of their progress digitally. But I think you're right. There are a number of roles and jobs that that need to be looked at in retraining and reskilling, and how are we going to do that?
Just going back to the whole education system, I think it's lagging in terms of, you know, the rate of change and the way it's adapting. I know there's a review of Tomorrow's Schools happening right now. My fear is that it's just going to be tinkering around the edges. It's not really looking at, you know, how do we fundamentally change education in a world where, you know, we need to learn differently. So.
I was thinking, any ideas about how we're going to finance some of these things? Like, things are changing. Electric cars, you know, there's no more petrol tax, so what's going to happen? You know, probably electric tax. Yeah. But what are we going to do to actually create? There was a. Sorry, if you got something.
In a short answer, you might have heard of the Internet of Things and the cryptocurrency called IOTA. And that means you can have minuscule payments for use of anything, whether it be an autonomous car or switching on your light and getting some power from the grid. Presumably that would be a comfortable way of financing everything, I would guess.
It's a good idea.
I think large organisations have a big part to play as well in retraining people and bringing people in, and I know there's a lot of discussion as how relevant are universities today. So large organisations within New Zealand taking people on a journey to retrain them. I think that's where we have to start thinking about that a lot more.
Retraining in what? Then I think that's part of the students' perspective, what am I going to be doing? I don't know. So maybe I won't do anything. So.
Well, it could be today. I think we've all got a role to play, even some of us that are older. We're not going to necessarily be doing the job that we're doing today in 5 years. So I guess it's all about what takes an interest, and whatever way technology moves, there are going to be different ways of working. And I think you talked to me yesterday, Mike, about the cars on the border of Canada and... Yeah.
So I think there's a whole lot of new jobs. What about 3D printing, creating new type of concepts? Sorry,
I think we're concentrating on the wrong market. It's the most beautiful place in the world. I moved here for a reason. I've been here 6 years. Yeah, tourism and service industries and the primary industries are our goal. And our service, hotels and restaurants, is zero compared to France and Europe. You know, we don't like doing it. We've got to change our attitude and become a premier destination. All these people that are making all the money out of the AIs have got to go somewhere on holiday. At the moment, they're buying land in New Zealand. Let's encourage them all to come here and take their money off them.
Love it.
Thanks. Depending on which report you read, they say that about 60 to 70% of children that are starting school today will hold a job that doesn't exist yet. So I think one thing, there was a study done on how the internet had affected employment in France, and they went back 15 years and found that the internet had wiped out 500,000 jobs. But at the same time, it created 1.2 million jobs. So the net effect was at plus 700,000 jobs over those 15 years. So the point is, I think we don't necessarily know what's out there, but the evolution will happen. What we do know is that automated jobs are going to become redundant, not humans. So there are other skills, and they list jobs like, or more skills rather than jobs. So skills like being an explainer, being able to interpret the output of AI, being a sustainer, the optimization or optimizing the effectiveness of the AI systems, trainers feeding AI systems capacity for judgment, etc. So skills that we don't necessarily think about as core skills will become more, and they're more about humans' rationalization elements that machines cannot reproduce, and possibly AI will struggle for a long time.
Excellent. I teach at Massey in the BA degree, and I'm really struck by, we tell the students all of this stuff, the future of work, soft skills, blah, 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 it's all about that. And I watch them, and that's kind of like, they realize the social contract is no longer here for them, right? There's this uncertainty hanging over them, and it's kind of like, what is the future going to be for us? And the psychological effect of that, I think, is really powerful for them, and it's kind of debilitating. And, we talk about the millennials and youngers not being interested, not being engaged, all this kind of stuff, and I get it, because the world is fucked for them, right? And I just don't know what to say to them. And I feel like none of us have got the answer, right? It's this kind of thing hanging over us. Anyway, it's just an observation about what's happening with what I'm seeing for young people at the moment.
Oh, I'll let this conversation continue because mine was on a different topic.
I'm just going to suggest that while it might not be true, it's worth, and I'm going to sound a bit retro here, like you asked what to teach people. To a certain extent, I'm going to go with the old school things, like you might not know the 3D printer of the future, but that's art class. If you can draw it, it will make it. That's not a problem. And the computers can build anything, make anything, but you still have to write the report to the board to get permission to make it. So communication and art, really. Just my thought.
I think following on from that, I think, Paul, what you were saying about primary industries is going to be right. I think farming will still happen in New Zealand, forestry, tourism, and these other things. And some of it can be automated. You know, there's a lot of, in terms of figuring out when to milk and having, you know, milking devices to help with that. But there's still humans needed to shear sheep and some of these other things. So I'm curious about maybe other ways that we can work with machines, maybe not fully automating things, but figuring out ways that maybe we can have mechanical helpers to make the process more comfortable and maybe even more enjoyable. So it's not, you know, working in the meatworks isn't going to screw your body as much, and maybe it'd be more fun and attractive. And also I have a vested interest here because I'm writing an article about exosuits. So if anyone knows of exosuits being used in New Zealand, please let me know because I'm struggling.
Can I say I don't know what exosuits are?
It's like the most famous example is maybe from the movie Aliens, where the main character Ripley is in this big kind of like mechanical lifter, but maybe a more prosaic example is in some production lines, like for Ford Motor Company in the US. They've just introduced a bunch of kind of just like shoulder and arm support. So people who are doing a lot of upward motion, like drilling, it's like a little hydraulic lift that supports your arm. So it's better on your body and gives you a little bit of extra strength.
Wow, fascinating.
On Netflix at the moment about that. Yeah.
If we're looking at the future, according to the Singularity Fraternity, the wealth will be delivered to the people, so you won't be worrying about whether you can pay the rent or feed yourself. One of the questions will be, what do you do? Is education really was important because it meant that you could earn and eat. But when your physical requirements are met by abundant energy and so on, as long as you don't wreck the planet, then you're into retirement. At the moment, there's thousands of very happy retirees. They're not sitting down watching TV all day long. They're not all playing bowls. They're doing what they want to do. As far as the education is concerned, if they want to do a little startup, which many of them will, and become more and more popular, they will get onto YouTube or whatever the future equivalent of that is. They will learn. They won't need to be taught in classrooms and prepared. Learning will just become a part of the lifestyle of the better world that we're moving into. So that's what I'd say to my students if I was you. I'd say we're heading into a time where you won't have to worry about getting a job because your income and everything will be paid for. In fact, there's in this fraternity, they're saying things will be free. Have you noticed how things are getting cheaper? Things will be free, or you'll have enough money to cover them. So you're up against now meaningfulness of life. But I think that can be provided with abundant opportunity to connect with other people, socialise, which makes you feel good, and to do useful things. You know, the startups, what do they call them? You may have an idea, you put it out, the crowdfunding, all these things. We'll all be doing that. You build from the ones and ones that exist now. You see a two, and you get out there and you make the two. That's kind of the way we're going. So I don't think it's a bad future at all.
We've just got a couple more minutes, which is one more and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, adding to that, yesterday one of my colleagues and I was looking for a course, and we were looking at the charge. Then we found the course here, it was nearly $2,000, but in America it was $48. It's a MOOC and it's really flexible. And we were like, okay, what to pick? If these credentials are met, like the credit levels in New Zealand and America is different, so that's a concern for us. And I was like, okay, if it was that, should we pick this? So that has come that much cheaper, and along with the MOOCs coming in, and it's the services like education can be really cheaper. I agree with that. And after that, so the subject matter will be everywhere, so we can grab subject matter from everywhere. At the end of the day, the skills and the personal skills like collaboration, the good human qualities, from where are we going to get them? So that's a question for all of us. All the services will be free, will be cheaper. So how can we gather the other qualities that we really need? So that's the role of the education at the end, I think.
I think you're right.
Oh, hi, just a comment to you. I can assure you New Zealand meat industry is heavily involved in industrial automation, and it's not interested in helping their workers. It's about removing labour. And I personally know of examples of this, many examples. There's a great article as well called New Zealand, the Detroit of Agriculture, and so the growth in vat-grown synthetic meat and the possible risk to New Zealand about that. So, yeah.
So what we need to be teaching the children to do is to imagine, to dream, and to be inspirational, because those are the only three things we got left.
Well, that brings us to a close, but I'd like to thank you very much for your contribution. I think there's some excellent discussion, and I think we could continue in breaks and over lunch, and such a wealth of ideas. Yes, the concern is, what are we going to do for the future? What are we going to tell our children? How are we going to... But I think you're right. It's about our imagination, because as humans, we've, thousands of years we've been developing and changing. Yeah. Yeah, so don't lose sight of we as humans have so much more potential. Yeah. So thank you very much, and I think we've got another session now.
I think we might be morning tea.
Morning tea.
Morning tea.
So have a break, and thank you again.
Thanks, everyone.